The last thing she remembered was his eyes. The fire didn't hurt as much as his silence did. That was the thing no one tells you about dying. The pain, the real pain, it doesn't live in your body. It lives in the moment you look at the person who was supposed to love you, and you watch them look away. My name was Seren Ashford. I was 23 years old, a daughter of the Iron Vale pack, and on the night of the autumn moon, I was dragged to the center of our stone courtyard and declared a traitor. The charges were read aloud for everyone to hear. Conspiracy against the Alpha. Sharing pack secrets with the rival Duskfang clan. Endangering the lives of 300 wolves. I remember standing in the center of that circle with my wrists bound in cold iron chain, looking out at the faces of people I had known my entire life. My old teacher, Elder Mara, wouldn't meet my eyes. My childhood friend, Lyra, was crying into her hands. And Caius. Alpha Caius Vane. The man I had loved for 2 years. The man I had given everything to. He stood at the edge of the circle with his jaw set and his silver eyes fixed somewhere just past my shoulder. Like I was already gone. Like I had already stopped existing. "Do you have anything to say?" the elder asked me. I looked at Caius. Just him. Just those silver eyes that refused to find mine. "I didn't do it," I said. My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that, even then. I loved this pack. I loved. The iron chain jerked. I stumbled forward. "The sentence is death," the elder said. And that was it. 2 years of loyalty. 2 years of waking at his side, running at his flank, bleeding for his pack. Erased in 30 seconds. The fire came quickly. I remember the heat, the roar of it, the way the crowd went utterly silent. And I remember thinking, he's not even going to watch. I was right. He turned his back before the flames reached me. And then, nothing. Darkness. A long, deep, silent nothing. Until the cold. Until the gasp. Until I opened eyes that weren't mine, in a room that wasn't mine, in a body that felt like a borrowed coat 2 sizes wrong. And realized. I was still here. But everything else had changed. Chapter 1. The first breath was agony. Not fire pain, something worse. The sensation of air hitting lungs that hadn't been used in a long time, like trying to inflate something that had been left folded and forgotten in a drawer. I sat up. Or, someone sat up. My hands, her hands, pressed flat against white linen sheets so crisp they crinkled. The room was large. Larger than any room I'd ever slept in. Stone walls hung with deep charcoal tapestries. A fireplace crackling softly to the left. A vanity mirror across from the bed, framed in dark iron and carved with the Iron Vale sigil. The wolf's head. The crescent beneath it. Iron Vale. I was still in the Iron Vale pack. My heart, her heart, kicked hard and strange. I pushed myself to the edge of the bed and stood on legs that wobbled. Made it to the mirror. And stopped. The face looking back at me was not my face. Dark hair. Mine had been gold. Sharper jaw. Whiter mouth. Eyes the color of deep amber, almost copper. A slender throat with a fading bruise along the left side that I hadn't noticed until I tilted the face, her face, toward the firelight. She had been hurt recently. Whoever she was. Whoever I was now. I raised the hand. She raised her hand in the mirror. I pressed my palm flat to the glass, and the cold of it shot straight through me like a wire pulled taut from my sternum to the back of my skull. "What is this?" I whispered. But my voice came out in someone else's register, deeper than mine, huskier at the edges, with an accent I didn't recognize. I cleared the throat. Tried again. "What is this?" A knock at the door. I spun away from the mirror so fast I nearly fell. "My lady?" A young voice. A girl. The Alpha requests your presence at morning meal. The Alpha. The word hit me like a thrown stone. I pressed my back against the wall beside the mirror, breathing hard. The Alpha requests your presence. My lady. Which meant whoever this body belonged to, this woman with the dark hair and the bruised throat and the amber eyes. She was here as his. She was here as the Alpha's. As Caius's. I pressed both hands over my mouth. A laugh was trying to come out, and it was not a sane laugh. It was the kind of laugh that lives on the thin wire between grief and madness. Of course. Of course, this is what waking up looks like. Not freedom. Not justice. Not a second chance in some safe, distant place far away from everything that had destroyed me. No. I woke up here. Inside the woman who replaced me. Inside his new mate. My lady? The girl knocked again. He said not to be late. I pressed my back harder into the wall. Thought fast. What do I know? What do I have? I had my memories. Every single one of them, crisp and precise and painful as broken glass. I had her body, capable, wolf-blooded by the scent of it, stronger than it looked. I had her position. Whatever her name was, whatever role she'd been brought here to fill. She was close to Caius. She had access. She had proximity. And I had a reason. I had every reason. I crossed the room, opened the door. The girl standing in the hallway was maybe 16, with wide brown eyes and a little scar on her chin. She bowed her head immediately. Good morning, my lady. I kept my face very still. Good morning. I tried to pitch my voice carefully. Match the register of this throat. The girl looked up, blinked. Something flickered across her face. Hesitation. Are you feeling better? After last night? Last night. Something happened last night. A little, I said carefully. Still, foggy. She nodded, accepting this easily. Master Corin said you'd taken a bad reaction to the bonding tonic. He was worried. Bonding tonic. My stomach turned. The bonding tonic. They gave it to new mates before the official ceremony. It was supposed to smooth the early days of the bond. Help the new pair sink. Some wolves had bad reactions to it. Bad enough reactions to lose consciousness. Bad enough to vacate a body for something else to move into. I didn't know if that was how it worked. I didn't know anything about how this had happened. But the timing made a brutal kind of sense. What is your name? I asked the girl. She blinked again. It's Pip, my lady. I've been assigned as your personal attendant. Another hesitation. You asked me to remind you of it every morning. You said you had trouble remembering names. She had trouble remembering names. Good to know. Right. I managed something that might pass for a smile. Of course. Pip. I stepped out into the hallway. Lead the way, I said. To the Alpha, I did not say. To the man who killed me. To the man I am going to destroy. Chapter 2. The Great Hall of Ironvale Manor was exactly as I remembered it. High rafters strung with iron lanterns. Long tables of dark oak worn smooth by decades of use. The smell of wood smoke and pine and something older underneath it all, something mineral and wild and deeply, deeply wolf. I had eaten in this hall 100 times. I had laughed in this hall. I had sat at that table, the Alpha's table, raised on its platform at the head of the room, and felt like I belonged somewhere for the first time in my life. Now I walked toward it as a stranger in a stolen body, and every step was a kind of war. Don't react. Don't flinch. Don't let him see anything on your face that shouldn't be there. The hall was half full. Morning meal in Ironvale wasn't a formal affair. Wolves drifted in and out, filling plates, talking in low clusters. No one paid much attention to me at first. And then they did. A ripple. Subtle. The way a room shifts when someone important enters. Heads turning. Eyes dropping. The particular, pointed silence of people who are pretending not to watch. She's new, their body language said. She's his, their downcast eyes confirmed. I kept my chin level. Pip stopped at the edge of the raised platform. The Alpha, she murmured. As if I might have missed him. As if Caius Vane could ever be missed. He was already looking at me. Of course he was. He sat at the head of the table with one arm braced across the back of his chair and the other wrapped loosely around a mug of something dark and steaming, and he was looking at me the way he always used to look at things he was assessing. Quiet. Precise. Patient as stone. Silver eyes. Still silver. Still that particular, unsettling silver that caught light like a blade. He was beautiful. He had always been beautiful. That was the worst part. If he'd been hideous, this would have been easier. But he was all dark hair and a jaw like sculpture and shoulders that seemed built specifically to make you feel like nothing bad could touch you when they were between you and the world. I knew better. I knew better now. You're late, he said. His voice was low. Not angry. Just noting the fact. I apologize. I took the seat at his right, the mate's seat, and I sat down and I did not look at him. Not yet. Not until I could trust my face. Pip vanished with a soft curtsy. A plate materialized in front of me. Eggs, cured meat, dark bread. The smell of it made the body I was wearing react with unexpected hunger. Sharp and immediate. She hadn't eaten in a while, then. I picked up the fork. How are you feeling? Caius asked. I made myself look at him. Better, I said. The fogginess is lifting. He studied me. That gaze. Even as someone else's face, I could feel it, the pressure of his attention, the way it scanned and catalogued without giving anything away. Master Corin says the bonding reaction may cause some disorientation for several days, he said. So I've been told. If there's anything you need? There isn't. He went still. I realized, half a second too late, that she might not have spoken to him this way. New mates didn't speak to alphas this way. Especially not after barely a week. I softened my face by a degree. I only mean, I don't want to be fussed over. I let something rueful into the expression. I'm already embarrassed enough. He held that gaze for another long moment. Then something shifted at the edge of his mouth, not quite a smile, but the shadow of one. Duly noted, he said. And he looked away. I exhaled through my nose. Very quietly. Ate 3 bites of egg without tasting them. And thought, I need to know who she is. Who this woman was. Her name. Her background. Her history with Caius. I needed the story she had told him, because at any moment he might reference it and I would have no answer. I needed to find her memories. And that was when I realized, there was something else in here with me. Not a voice. Not a presence. More like, the ghost of instinct. When I reached for the water pitcher, my hand moved 6 inches left of where I'd intended, to a spot that turned out to be exactly where the pitcher sat. Like the body knew. Like she had habits that were written into the muscle and the bone. She's still in here, I thought. Not alive. Not conscious. But layered through this body like a watermark. And if I was careful. If I was very, very careful. I could read her. I looked back at Caius. He was speaking to the wolf on his left now, his beta, a broad-shouldered man named Rafe whom I knew well. Knew. Past tense. Rafe wouldn't know this face. He'd never had reason to look at me this closely. None of them had, when I was Seren. I had been the Alpha's mate. Not invisible, but framed always in relation to him, never examined as myself. And now I wore the face of a woman none of them knew at all. I was more invisible than I had ever been. Which meant I could watch. I could learn. I could find whatever they had buried. The evidence of my false conviction was somewhere in this manner. Someone had fabricated it. Someone had stood in that courtyard knowing I was innocent and said nothing. I intended to find them. And I intended to make sure Caius knew exactly what had been done in his name. Before or after he came to care for this new face. I hadn't decided that part yet. What's your name again? The question came from my left. A woman I didn't recognize, maybe 30, with red-streaked hair and the kind of casual authority that meant she ranked. She was looking at me with bright, openly curious eyes. Not hostile. Just curious. Mira, said the body, before my brain had fully caught up. Mira. There it was. The watermark gave me her name. Mira, the woman repeated. I'm Sasha. Rafe's mate. She tilted her head. You feeling better? You looked like death last night. Apparently I nearly was, I said. She laughed, short and surprised and genuine. I like you, she said. You're not what I expected. I smiled carefully. What did you expect? Sasha glanced briefly at Caius. Then back at me. And her voice dropped just slightly. Someone softer, she said. Neither was the woman before her, her eyes seemed to say. Neither was Seren. Chapter 3. I found her things in the afternoon. Mira's things. A trunk at the base of the wardrobe, still half-packed, the kind of unpacking that had been interrupted and never resumed. Inside, neatly folded clothes in dark, practical colors. A leather journal with a brass clasp that had been locked and then unlocked and then locked again so many times the clasp was worn smooth. A bundle of letters tied with gray ribbon. And at the very bottom, wrapped in a square of dark cloth. A small bone-handled knife. I held it up to the window light. The blade was clean. Never used for anything bloody, by the smell of it. But it had been sharpened recently. Why did you have this, Mira? I set it aside. The journal was more useful. I sat on the edge of the bed with it in my lap and clicked the clasp and opened it, and then I sat very still for a long moment. Her handwriting was small and cramped and slanted hard to the left, like everything she wrote was trying to lean away from the page. I started at the beginning. Entry 1. They've chosen me for the Alpha. I didn't ask for this. I want to be clear about that, even if only to myself. The Morvain Council approached my father, not me. My opinion was requested last, as a formality. When I said I had reservations, Elder Dracos said, Miss Vane, this will benefit your family and your people enormously. He said it in the voice men use when they've already decided and are performing the request. I said yes. What else could I say? I leave for Ironvale in 3 days. The Morvain Council. I knew that name. The Morvain Council was the Interpack governance body, the closest thing the Wolf territories had to a court of authority. They had jurisdiction over pact disputes, trade agreements, bloodline alliances. They had sent her here. She hadn't chosen Caius. She'd been placed. I turned pages quickly. Entry 4. He is nothing like what I imagined. I imagined an alpha, all bluster and demand and dominance for its own sake. Caius Vane is not that. He's quiet. He listens more than he speaks. He looked at me for a long time when we met, and I felt like he was searching for something. I don't know if he found it. He was polite. Formal. Nothing more. The pack is still grieving their last Luna. No one says her name. I've started to understand this is not kindness, it's order. Her name has been removed. I heard one of the younger wolves almost say it at dinner, and the beta shot him a look that killed the word in his throat. Her name has been removed. Something about that sits badly with me. I had to stop reading for a moment. My name had been removed. Seren Ashford. Wiped. Scrubbed from every surface, every conversation, every record. I hadn't known that. I don't know why it hurt me the way it did. I was dead. Names don't matter when you're dead. But something about the way Mira had written it, something about that sits badly with me, made my throat close. She had noticed. She had cared. This woman who'd been brought here against her had looked at the ghost of me and thought, that's wrong. I kept reading. Entry 11. I found one. Hidden behind a loose stone in the eastern corridor, 3rd floor. A small carved sigil I didn't recognize at first. I brought it to Master Corin and he went very quiet, and then he said it was nothing, an old hunting mark, and took it from me. He was lying. He's a bad liar. The sigil was Duskfang. I gripped the journal tighter. Duskfang. The rival clan. The clan I had supposedly conspired with. Mira had found a Duskfang sigil hidden in the manor. Master Corin, the pack healer, had taken it and lied about what it was. Master Corin. I ran through my memories quickly. Corin had been called as a witness at my trial. He had confirmed the evidence against me, a coded message supposedly written in my hand, found in a location that pointed toward a Duskfang agent. He had confirmed it without hesitation. Without flinching. He had looked me in the eye and condemned me, and I had thought, he believes it. He truly believes it. But if he recognized a Duskfang sigil and lied about it? He knew. He had always known. Entry 14. The last entry. Dated 4 nights ago. I think I've made a mistake. I found something else today. Something I wasn't supposed to find. I haven't written it here, I'm afraid of what will happen if this journal is discovered. But I want it on record that I came here in good faith. I want it on record that whatever happens next was not what I chose. If someone finds this after I'm gone, look at what was found in the healer's quarters. And ask the Alpha why his last mate's conviction file has been sealed. The journal ended there. I sat for a long time in the stillness of Myra's room, my room now, with the journal closed in my lap and the bone-handled knife on the bed beside me. She had found something. Something dangerous enough that she'd stopped writing it down. And then she had taken the bonding tonic and had a catastrophic reaction, and I, dead, formless, furious, had fallen into the gap she'd left. Was it an accident? The bonding tonic. Master Corin administered it. Master Corin, who had lied about the Duskfang sigil. Master Corin, who had testified against me. My fingers tightened on the journal. Was Mira poisoned? Was she given something in that tonic to stop her from finding the rest of what she'd started to uncover? And if she had been, did that mean she was truly gone? Or was she somewhere in here, buried deeper than the muscle memory and the instincts, waiting? A knock at the door. I pushed the journal under the mattress in one smooth motion, the knife after it. Yes? The door opened. Caius. Not Pip. Not Sasha. Not any of the servants. Him. He stood in the doorway with his arms at his sides and that unreadable stillness on his face, and he looked at me for a moment that stretched several seconds longer than it should have. You missed afternoon training, he said. I didn't know I was expected. All pack members train. Mate or otherwise. I met his eyes. That silver gaze, direct and cool. I'll be there tomorrow, I said. He didn't move. Are you sure you're all right? He asked. Not cold. Not warm. Something very carefully in between. You keep asking me that, I said. You keep not quite answering it. I held his gaze. And the terrible, traitorous thing was this, even now, even wearing a dead woman's face and standing in the ashes of everything he had done to me. He was still him. And some broken, surviving part of me that hadn't gotten the message yet. Still felt it. Still felt the pull of him like a tide. I hated it. I hated it so viciously that it must have shown on Myra's face, because something shifted in his expression. Mira. I'm fine, I said. I'll be at training tomorrow. He studied me another long moment. Then he nodded, once, and turned and left. And I sat down hard on the bed and pressed my borrowed hands over my borrowed face and thought. This is going to be so much harder than dying. Chapter 4. Training began at dawn. The Ironvale training ground sat at the eastern edge of the manor grounds, a wide clearing of hard-packed earth ringed by old pines that caught the early light and broke it into long gold shafts. I remembered this place. I had bled here before. Not metaphorically. Caius had always believed that his mate should be able to fight. Not because she would be expected to, but because a wolf who couldn't defend herself was a vulnerability he refused to carry. I had respected that once. I respected it differently now. Because it meant I would be given access to weapons, to combat training, to the physical rhythms of the pack's defensive structure. It meant I would learn exactly how Ironvale protected itself. And exactly where it was exposed. Pip had laid out training clothes before I woke, dark-fitted trousers, a long-sleeved tunic in charcoal gray, boots with good ankle support. Myra's clothes. They fit perfectly, obviously. I dressed quickly and moved to the training ground before most of the pack was up. Old habit. Seren had always trained early. Alone, in the quiet, when the only sounds were birds and her own breathing and the satisfying rhythm of her body finding its edges. Myra's body had different edges. I discovered this approximately 12 seconds into my first warm-up. She was faster than I expected. Leaner. Her center of gravity sat lower, she'd been trained in a different style than I had. When I dropped into the fighting stance that lived in my muscle memory, it felt slightly wrong. Like putting on a shoe on the wrong foot. Different pack. Different training. I straightened. Started over. Let the body lead. She knew what she was doing. I just had to get out of the way. You start early. The voice came from behind me. I turned. Not Caius. A man I didn't recognize, tall, dark-skinned, with close-cropped hair and the kind of build that suggested his wolf form was enormous. He was maybe 28, with sharp, watchful eyes and a mouth that looked like it smiled more than it was smiling now. He wore the silver-edged band on his left wrist that marked a senior-ranked wolf. A lieutenant, then. Habit, I said. He walked toward me with the unhurried confidence of someone who owned the space he moved through. I'm Devlin, he said. Third lieutenant. I'm in charge of your combat integration. My combat integration. Meaning, teaching the Alpha's new mate how Ironvale fought. Mira, I said, because that was who I was. He nodded. I know who you are. His tone carried something that wasn't quite warmth and wasn't quite its opposite. Have we met? I asked. Something flickered across his face. No, he said. Then, but I knew your predecessor. The word landed like a stone into still water. Your predecessor. Not the last Luna. Not the previous mate. Your predecessor. Like I had been a role she'd filled and I was the next applicant. I kept my face perfectly still. I've heard very little about her, I said. Which was technically true, from Myra's perspective. Devlin watched me. Most people haven't, he said. Not anymore. Because of the conviction? His jaw tightened. Barely. Almost invisible. Because of the order, he said quietly. The Alpha gave the order himself. Her name, her image, her files, all restricted. I tilted my head. Do you think she was guilty? Silence. A long, particular silence that said everything and nothing. That's not a question lieutenants ask out loud, Devlin said finally. But privately? He looked at me for a very long moment. I think, he said, that a woman I trained for 6 months and trusted with my flank did not betray this pack. My heart, Myra's heart, slammed once, hard, against her ribs. He knew me. Not Mira. Me. He had trained with Seren. Fought beside her. And he hadn't believed the conviction. It was the most I had ever wanted to cry since waking up in this body. I didn't. I couldn't. I pressed it down hard and kept my face at a careful neutral. That must be a difficult thing to carry, I said. Yes, he said simply. It is. He rolled his shoulders. Shifted into a trainer's stance. Shall we see what you can do, he said. We sparred for an hour. Devlin was good. Very good. But Mira was better than I'd initially given her credit for. She was trained in more Vane-style combat, low center of gravity, emphasis on deflection over brute force, quick transitions between offense and defense. 3 times she moved before I'd consciously decided to move, pure instinct, muscle memory so deep it bypassed thought entirely. Each time it happened, Devlin's eyes sharpened. By the end, he was looking at me the way you look at a puzzle you're not sure you've correctly identified. You're better than your intake assessment suggested, he said, not accusatory, just observational. I rolled the shoulder, her shoulder, she'd landed on twice. I was nervous for the intake assessment, I said. He accepted this. But his eyes didn't quite let it go. The rest of the pack filtered in as we finished. I watched them from the edge of the clearing with water cupped in both hands and the rising sun turning everything amber. There Rafe, the beta, drilling 2 younger wolves with a patience that surprised me. I remembered Rafe as quick-tempered. Something had changed in him. There, elder Mara, moving through the far side of the grounds with a wrapped parcel under her arm, not looking toward the training circles. Elder Mara. She had read my charges aloud. She had held the scroll and looked at me without expression and pronounced me condemned. I watched her cross the grounds. Noted the direction she walked. The eastern corridor. 3rd floor. The same corridor Mira had written about in her journal. I felt it then, the pull of it. Not the mate bond. That hadn't formed yet between Caius and Mira, which meant I was operating without that complication for now. What I felt was something sharper. The pull of a thread. A loose end that wanted pulling. Look at what was found in the healer's quarters, Mira had written. Ask the Alpha why his last mate's conviction file has been sealed. 2 tasks. One I could approach carefully, over time. The other? The other I would need access to Corrin's quarters, which meant I needed a reason to be there. Which meant I needed to appear vulnerable. Easy enough. I pressed 2 fingers to my temple and let my legs go just slightly soft. Mira. Devlin's voice. Sharp with concern. I'm all right, I said. Just dizzy. The bonding tonic, still. He was at my side in 3 strides. You should see Corrin, he said. Let me. No. Too quick. I softened it. I mean, I'd prefer to go alone. I don't want to make a fuss. He hesitated. You know where the healer's quarters are? I'll find them, I said. He studied me. That careful, slightly too perceptive gaze. 2nd floor, he said. West wing. Down the corridor with the blue runners. Blue runners. West wing. Not eastern corridor. Not 3rd floor. Which meant whatever Mira had found up there, Corrin had moved it. Or it was still there, hidden again, waiting. Thank you, I said. I went to the healer's quarters. I had to. Because I needed the cover story to be real, needed Corin to see me and register me as a patient, someone ordinary, someone unthreatening. He was there when I arrived, a small man who had always seemed gentle to me, with neat gray-streaked hair and round-lensed spectacles that he wore pushed up on his forehead more than on his face. He looked up when I entered. Smiled. The same smile he had worn on the day he testified against me. Lady Mira. Feeling unwell again? Still dizzy, I said. From the tonic. Yes, sit down, let me look at you. He gestured to a chair and I sat in it and let him take my pulse with 2 fingers and peer at my eyes and ask questions about sleep and appetite. The whole time I was looking at the room. Shelves of labeled jars. A locked cabinet along the far wall, iron-banded, combination lock. A work table with mortar and pestle, herbs bundled and drying overhead. Everything visible was orderly, clinical, unremarkable. The locked cabinet was not orderly. It was the only thing in the room that was locked. I filed it. You look much better than yesterday, Corin said warmly. I think you're past the worst of it. That's a relief, I said. I'll mix you a mild restorative. Should clear the remaining fog. He turned to the shelves. Tell me, I said conversationally, watching his back, have you been the pack healer long? 22 years, he said. That's a long time, I said. You must have seen everything. He laughed softly. Everything and then some. Were you here for the trial? I asked. The Luna before me? His hands went still. Just for a beat. Then kept moving, selecting a jar. I was, he said. It must have been very difficult, I said. Testifying against someone you knew. He set the jar down. Turned to look at me. His expression was smooth. Practiced. But underneath, something moved. Something that wasn't quite guilt and wasn't quite fear but lived in the neighborhood of both. It was necessary, he said. Of course, I said pleasantly. He handed me a small folded paper packet. Steep it in hot water, 3 minutes, he said. Drink it before bed. I took it. Smiled. Thank you, Master Corin. I stood to leave. Lady Mira? I stopped. Turned. His eyes were fixed on my face with an expression I couldn't quite read. The bonding tonic affects different people in different ways, he said slowly. Sometimes, in severe reactions, it causes memory fragmentation. Gaps. Confusion about identity. A pause. He was watching me very, very carefully. If you experience anything like that, he said, I hope you'll come to me immediately. He suspects something. I kept my smile perfectly even. Of course, I said. And I walked out. And my hands were completely steady all the way down the corridor, through the manor, up to my room. Where I closed the door and leaned against it and thought. How much does he know? And how quickly do I need to move? Chapter 5. There is a thing they don't tell you about wolf packs. Not outsiders, insiders, I mean. People raised in them. The thing is this, a pack is not a family. It pretends to be one. It performs family, the shared meals, the training circles, the language of brothers and sisters and protection and blood bond. But underneath all of that performance, a pack is a hierarchy. And hierarchies have a singular loyalty. Not to truth. Not to justice. To whoever sits at the top. I had believed in the performance. That was how they'd been able to destroy me. I didn't believe it anymore. The pack had a social hour every evening before dinner, informal, in the long sitting room off the main hall, where wolves drifted in clusters with drinks and conversation and the particular communal ease of people who had chosen to trust each other. Or had chosen to perform trust. I had started attending 3 nights in. Sat in the corner with a cup of something warm and listened. You learn extraordinary things when people don't think you're paying attention. Tonight, I learned that Rafe and Sasha were having difficulties. Not spoken aloud, just visible in the careful half-meter of space they maintained even when sitting side by side. The way she refilled her drink and his cup simultaneously but didn't look at him when she did it. I filed that. Proximity to Sasha was useful. A woman with a fracture in her closest relationship was more likely to talk. I also learned that there was a delegation coming from the Morvain Council in 12 days. That was new. Do you know why they're coming? I aimed the question at Sasha, who had drifted to my corner with the sighing relief of someone escaping a conversation they didn't want to have. She dropped into the chair across from me. Officially? Routine review. She took a long sip of her wine. They do one every quarter. Pack leadership, resource management, conflict reports. And unofficially? She looked at me over the rim of her cup. You're direct, she said. Not a complaint. I prefer it, I said. I've never been good at the long way around. She almost smiled. Unofficially, there are rumors the council has concerns about the eastern border situation. The Duskfang incursions? Something moved in her eyes. You know about those? Pieces, I said carefully. Caius mentioned it, briefly. He hadn't. But the watermark of Myra's memory had given me fragments of overheard conversations, and I was stitching them together as fast as I could. Sasha set her cup down. The Duskfang have been testing the eastern border for 8 months, she said. Small groups. Never enough to constitute an attack. Just pressure. Like they're looking for a gap. Or waiting for one, I said. She nodded slowly. Caius thinks it's posturing. The council thinks it's something more organized. She paused. And some people in the pack think. She stopped. Think what? I asked. She glanced toward the center of the room, where Rafe was talking to Devlin with his back to us. Think that the Duskfang have inside information, she said quietly. Have had it for a while. Long enough to know our patrol routes. Our rotation schedules. A spy, I said. A spy who's still here, she said. The word fell between us like something heavy. The spy was still here. The same spy who had been active during my time, who had actually committed the crimes they'd executed me for. Still inside Ironvale. Still reporting to Duskfang. And the pack knew it, at least in whisper form, but no one had been able to identify them. Because I had been a convenient answer. An easy solution. A face to attach to the crime so the investigation could stop. My jaw was so tight I had to consciously release it. That must be frightening, I said. It's exhausting, Sasha corrected. Living somewhere and not knowing who to trust, she cut herself off. Shook her head. Sorry. That's not a cheerful evening conversation. No, I agreed. But it's an honest one. She looked at me. Something in my face seemed to settle something in her. I'm glad you're here, she said. A little tentatively. I know that's a strange thing to say to someone who didn't exactly have a choice. But the pack needed something to shift. We've been heavy since last year. Since they killed me, I translated. Grief does that, I said. It wasn't only grief, Sasha said. Then Rafe appeared over her shoulder, and her expression shuddered, and the conversation ended there. I moved to leave. And found Caius in the doorway. He had the particular stillness he always had in social settings, present but not quite in them, watching from a slight remove. Our eyes met. He stepped aside to let me pass. Good night, Mira, he said. Good night, I said. I was 3 steps past him when he said, quietly. You were talking to Sasha. Not an accusation. Just an observation. I turned. Is that a problem? No. A pause. Sasha doesn't talk to many people these days. I noticed, I said. He studied me. What did you talk about? Trust, I said. Something shifted in his silver eyes. And what conclusions did you reach? He asked. That it's a fragile thing, I said. And much harder to rebuild than to break. I held his gaze for exactly 2 seconds. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in Myra's bed in the dark and ran through everything I had. Master Corin testified against me, recognized the Duskfang sigil, lied about it, has a locked cabinet, suspects something is wrong with Mira. Elder Mara read my conviction. Goes to the eastern corridor, 3rd floor. Connection to whatever Mira found up there. The spy, still inside Ironvale, has been feeding Duskfang information for at least 8 months. Possibly longer. Possibly long enough to have framed me. The Morvain Council sent Mira here. Arrives in 12 days. Knew about the eastern border situation. What else did they know? Caius sealed my files himself. Gave the order to erase my name. Either he believed my guilt completely, or something else. I didn't let myself finish that thought. Not yet. I reached under the mattress and pulled out the bone-handled knife. Held it in the dark. What were you going to do with this, Mira? The body remembered it. I could feel it, the specific memory of the hand closing around this handle. Not fear. Not aggression. Comfort. She had carried it the way you carry something that makes you feel less alone. Had she known she was in danger? Had she come here expecting it? I came here in good faith, she had written. But she'd brought a knife. And she'd started investigating within her first week. Either she was smarter and more suspicious than her journal initially suggested. Or someone had warned her. Who warned you, Mira? I closed my hand around the knife and lay there in the dark, listening to a manor full of people breathe. Somewhere in this building, a spy was sleeping. Somewhere in this building, the truth about my death was hidden. Somewhere in this building, a man who had turned his back on me while I burned was lying in his own room, and I did not know what he felt, and I did not know what he believed, and I hated that I still needed to know. I pressed the flat of the blade to my sternum. Felt the cool metal against Myra's heartbeat. I will find it, I told her. Or myself. Or whoever was listening in the dark inside this body. I will find all of it. And then? Then what? Then I would watch everything burn the way I had burned. The real traitor, exposed. Corin, destroyed. The conviction overturned, even posthumously. And Caius. Caius would know. He would know every day for the rest of his life that he had turned his back on an innocent woman while she died. That was the plan. That was all the plan I had. For now, it was enough. Chapter 6. I waited 4 days. 4 days of training with Devlin. Of meals at Caius's right hand. Of slow, careful conversation with Sasha and polite distance from everyone else. 4 days of being Mira so thoroughly that I started to feel the edges of myself getting soft. Not losing, I wasn't losing who I was. But inhabiting a role this completely was its own kind of gravity. I'd catch myself responding to her name without the half-second delay. I'd catch myself moving through the manor with the ease of someone who belonged. And once, only once, I caught myself laughing at something Caius said. A dry observation about one of the younger wolves attempting a maneuver he clearly hadn't fully thought through. Caius had said it quietly, just to me, and it was exactly the kind of thing I had always. I'd laughed before I remembered I wasn't supposed to. The look he'd given me afterward. I didn't want to examine that look too closely. On the 5th day, I went to the eastern corridor. 3rd floor. I went at midday, when the manor was at its most active, because the counterintuitive truth about moving through a place you shouldn't be is that busyness provides better cover than quiet. In the quiet, you're a presence in a void. In the busy middle of the day, you're just another person moving from one place to another. The third-floor eastern corridor was narrower than the floors below. Older stonework here, rougher, darker, with that deep mineral smell of walls that hadn't seen air circulation in years. Storage rooms mostly, up here. Old furniture. Pack records going back generations. A place that looked important enough to be maintained and unimportant enough not to be regularly visited. I counted the stones on the right-hand wall as I walked. Mira had written, third floor, eastern corridor, loose stone. I found it 18 paces in. It wasn't loose anymore. Someone had reset it, mortared it back into place, the work recent enough that the gray was a shade lighter than the surrounding stone. But they'd done it in a hurry. Or done it themselves, without a proper mason. The line wasn't quite straight. And the stone sat 3 millimeters proud of its neighbors. I needed a tool. I looked around the corridor, found nothing immediately useful, and then made myself think, what does this body know? What has she handled recently that would work? The knife. I'd tucked it into my boot that morning. I crouched at the base of the wall and worked the blade into the seam. It took 8 minutes. My shoulders burned. The stone came free. Behind it, a hollow space roughly the size of a book. Empty now. Whatever had been here, the Duskfang sigil Mira had first found, it had been removed. But not entirely without trace. At the back of the hollow, in the dust that no one had thought to wipe. The impression of something small and square. And scratched into the stone, in tiny, careful letters, the kind you made with a pin or a knife tip. Not sigil. Ledger. Corin third cabinet lock, ember ashroot silver. Mira. She'd come back. After the first time, when Corin had taken the sigil and lied to her face, she'd come back up here, found the hollow again, and left herself a message. A lock combination. For the locked cabinet in Corin's quarters. Ember ashroot silver. She must have found it when she investigated further. Must have discovered what the locked cabinet held. Had gone back here to record it. And then. Something had stopped her from using it. I pressed my palm flat against the hollow stone. I'm continuing your work, Mira, I thought. It felt less like a decision and more like a promise. I reset the stone as best I could, stood, and moved back down the corridor. Or tried to. Lady Mira. Elder Mara. Standing at the corridor's entrance, 10 feet away, with a stack of bound record folders under her arm and an expression I could not read. My pulse spiked once, hard. I kept walking. Elder Mara, I said pleasantly. Good afternoon. She didn't step aside. What are you doing on this floor? She asked. Calm. Even. But there was something underneath it. Exploring, I said. The manor is still unfamiliar. This corridor is storage, she said. There's nothing of interest here. I didn't find anything interesting, I agreed. She looked at me for a long moment. Down at my hands. I had the knife back in my boot. My hands were empty and clean. You're very curious, she said. For someone still recovering from a bonding reaction. Curiosity doesn't require good health, I said. Something moved in her eyes. Not quite recognition. But something adjacent to it. I knew her, she said. Quietly. Unexpectedly. I went very still. The previous mate, she continued. Seren. I knew her well. She was watching my face with that same quality of attention Corin had used. Testing something. What was she like? I asked. Mara was silent for a moment. She was exactly as stubborn as you, she said. And she walked past me and disappeared down the stairs. I stood in the corridor for a long time after. Exactly as stubborn as you. She knew. She knew or suspected. But she hadn't raised an alarm. She had come up here, to this corridor, and found me, and she had not immediately gone to Corin or to Caius. She had told me she knew Seren. She had told me I was like her. And walked away. Was that a warning? Or was it something else? Was Elder Mara, the woman who had read my charges aloud without flinching, trying to tell me that she was on my side? Why would she be? What does she know? What is she afraid of? I went back to my room. Sat on the bed. And did the math on what I had. Ember ashroot silver. Corin's locked cabinet. Whatever Mira had found in there, whatever had been dangerous enough to record only in a hidden hollow. I needed to get into that room alone. I needed Corin absent. Which meant I needed either a diversion or a schedule. Corin had a routine. Every pack healer did, calls to the infirmary, rounds with the training injured, supply inventory on specific days. I needed his supply inventory day. I needed Sasha. At dinner I sat beside her as I had started making a habit of doing. Let the conversation find its own way, as it usually did. Somewhere between the main course and the end of the meal I said, lightly. How often does Master Corin do his supply inventory? I'd like to request some additional tonics, but I don't want to interrupt him. Sasha didn't even look up from her plate. Fridays, she said. He's in the storage cellar from 9th bell to midday. Always. Perfect, I said. And I let the conversation move on. Friday was 2 days away. I looked down the table. Caius was listening to Rafe with the focused patience he brought to everything. As if he felt my gaze, he turned. Met my eyes. Held them for a beat. Then turned back to Rafe. 2 days, I thought. 2 days until I found out what was in that cabinet. 2 days until I either had everything I needed to start dismantling the lie. Or found something that complicated it. And in 2 days, something else would happen. Something I hadn't planned for. Something that would change every calculation I'd made. I just didn't know it yet. Chapter 7. Friday came cold. A low gray sky pressing down on the manor like a held breath, the kind of morning that made everything feel slightly more serious than it was. Or exactly as serious as it was. I was up before dawn. Dressed in dark clothes. Knife in my boot. Hair pulled back. Myra's face in the mirror calm and unreadable. I had gotten better at wearing her. That thought didn't comfort me as much as it should have. 9th bell rang through the manor like a stone dropped into water. I counted to 60. Then I moved. The West Wing corridor was quiet at this hour. Most of the pack was at morning training. Caius was in his study. I had confirmed this by listening to Pip's morning report, which included a summary of his schedule that she delivered with cheerful thoroughness every morning without me ever having to ask. Pip was an extraordinary resource. I felt briefly guilty about that. Then I opened Corin's door and stepped inside, and the guilt evaporated. The healer's quarters smelled of dried herbs and old wood, and underneath both of those things, something else. Something chemical. Sharp and slightly sweet, the way certain compounds smelled when they'd been recently used. Not medicine. Something else. I crossed to the locked cabinet immediately. Iron banded. The combination mechanism was a series of 4 rotating discs, each engraved with symbols rather than numbers. Ember. Ash. Root. Silver. I had spent 2 days committing those words to the equivalent rune symbols used in Iron Veil notation. The discs turned smoothly. The lock released. Inside the cabinet. 3 shelves. Top shelf, vials. Small glass ones, dark stoppered, labeled in Corin's cramped handwriting. Most were standard compounds, pain relief, fever reduction, wound sealing agents. But 3 vials on the far right were labeled differently. Not in Corin's writing. In a script I recognized immediately. Duskfang cipher. I had learned it because Caius had insisted I know the enemy's written language. The irony of that was not lost on me. I lifted one vial carefully. Read the cipher label. My blood went cold. Dissolution compound. Memory targeted. Single dose, selective erasure. Double dose, full cognitive fragmentation. Triple dose. The label was worn at the bottom edge. I tilted it toward the gray morning light from the high window. Triple dose, personality dissolution. Subject becomes receptive. Use with bonding tonic for. The rest was damaged. Water stained. Gone. I set the vial down with extreme care. Stood very still. Personality dissolution. Subject becomes receptive. Use with bonding tonic. The bonding tonic. Myra's bonding reaction. My arrival. Corin had put Duskfang dissolution compound into Myra's bonding tonic. Not to kill her. To empty her. To dissolve whoever she was and leave a receptive, pliable shell that would live beside Caius and observe and report. A spy's perfect instrument. A new Luna, seemingly genuine, seemingly bonded, but actually a hollow vessel carrying Duskfang consciousness. Except something had gone wrong. Mira had been too strong, perhaps. Or the dose had been miscalculated. Or the bond between a soul and its body was harder to dissolve than Corin had anticipated. She had fragmented instead of emptying. She had left. And I had fallen in. I was not Duskfang's spy. I was a dead woman who had crawled through the gap their sabotage created. And Corin didn't know that. He thought he'd created a vessel. He was watching me for signs that his compound had worked, that the woman behind Myra's eyes was his creature. When I behaved unexpectedly, he thought it was the compound's side effects. Not a ghost wearing his puppet's face. I moved to the middle shelf. A leather folder, slim, tied with dark cord. I opened it. Inside, correspondence. Handwritten letters and signed, but the cipher was consistent throughout, the same Duskfang hand as the vial labels. I read quickly. The Ironvale Eastern Patrol Schedule, as requested. The Alpha's planned response to the border incursion is: the Luna has become suspicious. She must be neutralized before the council visit. The Luna has become suspicious. Mira. She had been investigating. She had found the sigil. Started asking questions. And someone had reported it to Duskfang. Which meant the person writing these letters was inside Ironvale. And they weren't Corin. Corin was the mechanism of the supplier, the poisoner. But these letters had been sent to him. From someone else. Someone higher. I turned to the last letter. Unfolded it carefully. Read the first line. And felt everything inside me go absolutely, completely still. Caius has begun to show interest in the new mate. This complicates our position. If the bond forms before we can complete the installation. Installation. They called it installation. Loading their agent into Myra's emptied body like software into a machine. We recommend accelerating the timeline. The dissolution compound requires one additional dose. Administer during the evening meal, third day after the bonding ceremony. The third day. Today was the fifth day since the bonding ceremony had been scheduled. Which meant they had already tried to administer the second dose. And it hadn't worked, because I wasn't Duskfang's vessel. I was someone else entirely. So what would they do next? I heard footsteps in the corridor. Not Corin's shuffling pace. Heavier. I had maybe 4 seconds. I closed the folder. Replaced it exactly as I had found it. Closed the cabinet. Clicked the lock through its sequence. Turned toward the door. It opened. Caius stood in the doorway. Looking at me. In Corin's quarters. with the locked cabinet 3 feet behind me. Silence. 4 seconds of it. Mira, he said. Very carefully. I was looking for Corin, I said. My voice was steady. I knocked, the door was unlatched. I came in to wait. His eyes moved over the room. Over me. He's at inventory, he said. I know. I thought I might catch him before. Another silence. He was looking at me with that silver gaze and something in it that I couldn't quite classify. Not suspicion. Something more complicated. What did you need from him? He asked. I've been having trouble sleeping, I said. Since the bonding reaction? Yes. He studied me. Stepped into the room. Closed the door behind him. My pulse moved up, but I kept my body language loose. Easy. Unworried. Can I tell you something? He said. Of course. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I've been watching you. I know, I thought. You move differently than you did when you arrived, he said. You speak differently. Your reactions, a pause. Something changed after the bonding reaction. I met his eyes. Traumatic experiences tend to change people, I said carefully. Yes, he said. They do. He moved to the window. Stood with his back to me for a moment, looking out at the gray morning. The previous mate, he said. My body went rigid. Every muscle. I controlled it. Forced ease back into my limbs. Yes? I said. I've been thinking about her, he said. More than usual. Since you arrived. His voice was low. Measured. The way he spoke when he was saying something that cost him. She died believing I thought she was guilty, he said. I could not speak. Not for 5 full seconds. And then, did you? He turned. Looked at me across the room. And something in those silver eyes was raw in a way I had never seen on his face. Not in 2 years of knowing him. I don't know, he said. 2 words. 2 words that cracked something open in my chest that I had been keeping very carefully sealed. You don't know? I said. At the time, he stopped. Looked at his hands. At the time the evidence was clear. Witnesses. Physical evidence. A testimony from someone I trusted completely. A pause. And I was? Angry, I said. He looked at me. Yes, he said quietly. I was angry. And grief looks like certainty when you're in the middle of it. It feels like certainty. His jaw tightened. I gave the sentence in 3 hours. I didn't. He stopped. You didn't what? I asked. I didn't let her speak for long enough, he said. The fire didn't hurt as much as his silence did. I had thought that. Standing in those chains, looking at him. And now he was telling me. He had known. Not that I was innocent, but that he hadn't looked hard enough. He had known, somewhere under the anger and the grief and the terrible velocity of his own certainty, that he had not done enough. I wanted to tell him. God, I wanted to tell him. It's me. I'm right here. I'm standing 4 feet away from you and I have been in this body for 5 days and I am so tired of being dead and I need you to know. I pressed that down. Hard. This was not the moment. Not before I had proof. Not before I had everything. If I told him now, with nothing but my word, the word of a woman he'd already condemned once, he would not believe me. And Corin would know I'd been in that cabinet. And whoever was writing those letters would know their installation had failed. And everything would collapse before I had finished building it. You should find out, I said. He looked at me. What? Whether she was guilty. I held his gaze. You should open the files. Reinvestigate. If you genuinely don't know, then you owe it to her to find out. His expression was unreadable. The files are sealed, he said. By my own order. Then unseal them, I said. It's not, he stopped. It's complicated. It always is, I said. When we don't want to know the answer. Silence. The fire in the grate between us popped softly. Why do you care, he asked. About a woman you never met. I looked at him. Because someone should, I said. He left without another word. I stood in the healer's quarters for a long time afterward. Shaking. Not with fear. With something else. Something that had no clean name. He hadn't believed it completely. He had been carrying doubt. Caius Vane, who carried nothing lightly, who was incapable of uncertainty without it costing him, had been carrying doubt about what he'd done to me. Does that change anything? I pressed my hands flat against the cold stone wall. Does it change what he did? No. But it changed what he was. And I hadn't expected that. I hadn't planned for him to be something other than a monster. Monsters were easy. This was not easy. Chapter 8. I spent that evening trying to recalibrate. The plan was still the plan. Find the proof. Expose the traitor. Overturn the conviction. Make them all answer for it. The plan was still the plan. Caius's doubt did not change the plan. It just complicated the emotional architecture of it. I repeated this to myself several times while sitting in the window of my room watching the last gray light leave the sky. It didn't entirely stick. A knock at the door. Come in, I said. Sasha. She entered with 2 cups of something that smelled of warm spices and stood in the middle of the room with the self-conscious posture of someone who'd decided to do something impulsive and was now committed to seeing it through. I brought wine, she said. The good kind. Not the dinner kind. The dinner kind is terrible, I said. It's criminal, she agreed. May I sit? I gestured to the chair beside the window. She sat. Extended a cup. I took it. We sat in companionable silence for a moment. Outside, the last wolves were finishing evening training. Their calls drifted up, laughter, argument, the familiar rhythms of people who had lived beside each other long enough to stop performing. Rafe thinks I talk to you too much, Sasha said. Does he say that? He doesn't say anything. She stared into her cup. That's rather the problem. I waited. We lost someone, she said. A year ago. A miscarriage. Early. But still. She paused. He grieved differently than I did, and neither of us has figured out how to bridge that distance. I looked at her. This woman who had been kind to me from the first morning. Who had no obligation to be. I'm sorry, I said. And I meant it completely. She nodded. Took a sip. I'm not telling you for sympathy, she said. I'm telling you because I need you to understand something about this pack. About Caius. I straightened slightly. When Seren died, she said, Caius didn't grieve the way wolves grieve. He didn't, he shut it all away. Everything. Locked the files, ordered the name erased, and just kept moving. Like if he stopped, he'd have to feel it. And Rafe thinks that's strength. She set her cup down. I think it's a wound that hasn't been tended. Why are you telling me this? I asked quietly. She met my eyes. Because he looks at you, she said simply. Not the way he looked at, not the formal way. He looks at you the way he used to look at. She caught herself. The way he used to look at her? I said. Sasha was quiet. Yes, she said finally. And I don't know if that's beautiful or terrible. After she left, I sat for a long time with the cooling cup in my hands. He looks at you the way he used to look at her. Of course he did. Because whatever lived behind Myra's eyes, whatever was generating this face's expressions, speaking in this voice, sitting in this body, it was Seren. And some part of him, the part that had loved Seren before the anger and the evidence and the terrible speed of his own judgment. That part was finding her again. In a face he'd never seen before. And he didn't know why. And I couldn't tell him. I was still sitting there when the second knock came. Harder than Sasha's. "Come in," I said. "Devlin." He looked different than I had seen him before. The easy trainer's composure was absent. He was carrying something tightly wound, and it showed in the set of his shoulders, the stillness of his hands. "I need to speak with you," he said. "Then speak." He closed the door. Came to stand in the center of the room. "I need you to tell me something," he said. "And I need you to tell me the truth." My pulse moved. "All right," I said. He looked at me for a long moment. "When I first met you," he said, "I told you I knew the previous mate. Seren." A pause. "You asked me if I thought she was guilty." "I remember." "What I didn't tell you," he said, "is that I've been investigating it. For 6 months. Quietly. On my own." He exhaled through his nose. "And 3 weeks ago, I found something." "What did you find?" I asked. "A secondary patrol report," he said. "From the night the evidence against Seren was supposedly discovered. The report places the discovering officer in the wrong location. He couldn't have found what he claimed to have found where he claimed to have found it." "The evidence was planted," I said. "Yes." "Which officer?" His jaw tightened. "Garrett. Senior Patrol Lieutenant." A pause. "He's also the son of Elder Mara." Elder Mara. Who had gone to the Eastern Corridor. Who had found me there and looked at me with that specific, loaded quality of attention. Who had said, "She was exactly as stubborn as you." Who had walked away without raising an alarm. "Does Mara know what her son did?" I asked. "I don't know," Devlin said. "I don't know if she was complicit or if she only discovered it after. If she read my charges and..." He stopped. Something moved across his face. "If she stood in that courtyard knowing she was condemning an innocent woman because her own son." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. "Devlin," I said. "Who else knows about the patrol report?" "No one," he said. "Yet." His eyes met mine. "I'm bringing it to Caius tomorrow." I stood up. "Wait," I said. He frowned. "Why?" "Because if you go to Caius alone with one patrol report," I said, "Garrett and whoever is protecting him will have time to respond. To discredit you. To bury the secondary evidence. Then what do you suggest?" I thought fast. "You need more than the patrol report," I said. "You need corroborating evidence. Something that can't be explained away." I thought of the vials in Corrin's cabinet. The letters in Duskfang's cipher. "Give me 48 hours. He stared at me. Why would the Alpha's new mate have corroborating evidence of the previous mate's innocence? "Because," I said carefully, "I've been looking too." A long silence. "Why?" he asked. I met his eyes. The same eyes that had said, quietly, on my first morning in this body, "I think a woman I trained for 6 months and trusted with my flank did not betray this pack." "Because someone should," I said. He left me with 2 days and a promise to hold. I sat back down. Ran the whole thing through. Devlin had the patrol report. I had the cabinet evidence, the Duskfang compounds, the cipher letters. Together, they built a picture that couldn't be dismissed. The evidence against me had been planted by Garrett. Garrett, who had access to Duskfang resources through Corrin. Garrett, whose mother had read my conviction aloud. And someone higher, had been coordinating all of it. The letter in Corrin's cabinet, the Luna has become suspicious. She must be neutralized. Garrett was an instrument. Corin was an instrument. But the hand holding both of them. That was who I needed. I opened the journal from under the mattress. Reread the last entry. Look at what was found in the healer's quarters. And ask the Alpha why his last mate's conviction file has been sealed. Mira had written, ask the Alpha. Not, the Alpha is involved. Ask him. As in, the answer might be different from what it appeared. The seal on my files. Everyone had assumed it was guilt. Erasure. The standard practice of a pack that wanted to move forward cleanly. What if it wasn't? What if Caius had sealed the files not to bury me, but to protect something inside them? What if he'd sealed them because he'd found something wrong and hadn't known what to do with it? He didn't let her speak for long enough, he had said. At the time the evidence was clear. At the time. Past tense. I was on my feet before I decided to move. Down the corridor. Up the stairs. To the floor where his study sat. I knocked before I could stop myself. A beat of silence. Come in. He was at his desk with the files spread before him. Not my files, I could see the tab labels from the door. Eastern Border Reports. Duskfang movement patterns. He looked up. And his expression did something complicated when he saw me in the doorway. Mira. I need to ask you something, I said. Then ask. I stepped inside. Closed the door. The sealed file, I said. Seren's conviction file. Why exactly did you seal it? His hands went still on the desk. That's not a casual question, I know. I met his eyes. I'm not asking casually. A long silence. He looked at me for so long that I started to wonder if he would simply refuse. Then he opened his desk drawer. Took out a key. And unlocked the bottom drawer on the right. He lifted a folder from inside it. Held it for a moment. Then set it on the desk and turned it toward me. Because of what's in there, he said. I crossed to the desk. Opened the folder. Inside, clipped to the top of the documents. A small carved sigil. Wolf's head, fractured down the center. Not Duskfang. A sigil I knew but had not seen in years. Morvain. The Morvain Council sigil. Fractured. Which in Morvain notation meant, compromised. Internal breach. Where did you find this? I asked. In the evidence room, he said quietly. 3 weeks after the execution. Hidden in the lining of the evidence bag. He paused. Someone inside the council had touched that evidence. Someone with access, with authority, with the ability to fabricate what was found. A pause. And I didn't know who. And I didn't know how deep it went. And if I opened the files and started asking questions? You'd warn them, I said. Yes. So you sealed everything? Yes. And waited. And waited, he said. For something to move. For whoever it was to make another step. He looked at the folder. I've been waiting for months, Mira. And nothing has moved. He looked up at me. Until you arrived, he said. The room was very quiet. I looked at the fractured Morvain sigil. I looked at the man across the desk from me. And I thought, he knew. Not that I was innocent, not with certainty. But he'd known something was wrong. He'd found the crack in the evidence and instead of opening it or sealing it with certainty, he had held the fracture open with one hand and waited for what came through. And what came through was the Morvain Council sending him a new mate. Mira Vane. Dispatched by the same body that had compromised his evidence. He thinks she's their next move, I realized. He thinks I am their next move. He's been watching me, not with suspicion of what I might do to him. with suspicion of what I might have been sent to do. Do you think I was sent here to spy on you? I asked. I think the council sent you here for a reason, he said. Whether you know the reason or not. I don't, I said. He studied me. No, he said slowly. I don't think you do. I took a breath. Caius, I said. It was the first time I had said his name. Just his name, without title or formality. Something moved in his expression. I have something to show you, I said. In 48 hours. When I've assembled it completely. What kind of something? The kind that answers the question you've been sitting with for a year, I said. His silver eyes were very steady. And if I don't want to know the answer, he said. Very quietly. Then you'll keep waiting, I said. And they'll keep moving. And it won't end. Silence. All right, he said. 48 hours. Chapter 9. The next morning, Elder Mara came to my room. I opened the door and she stood in the hallway with her hands folded and her chin up and the composed expression of a woman who had decided to do something that cost her and had chosen to do it anyway. May I come in, she said. I stepped back. She entered. Looked around the room without comment. Sat in the chair by the window. I stood. You found the stone, she said. Not a question. Yes, I said. And the cabinet? I said nothing. She looked at me. I left the combination there, she said. I put it there. Not Mira. Something shifted in the room's quality. The air changed. It was you, I said. Who hid the message? Mira found the sigil, I'll give her that, Mara said. She was observant. But she didn't know what she was looking at. I knew she was getting close. I knew if she kept pulling the thread without knowing what shape it was, she stopped. I thought if I gave her access to the cabinet, to the evidence. You were trying to protect her, I said. Mara's hands tightened in her lap. I was trying to fix something I should have stopped long before it began, she said. I looked at her. Tell me, I said. She told me. She told me in the flat, precise voice of someone who had rehearsed the account so many times inside their own head that all the emotion had been worn off it, like a stone carried too long in a pocket. Her son, Garrett, had been recruited by a Duskfang operative 8 months before my conviction. She hadn't known. Not until after. He had planted the evidence against me. Had provided the false patrol report. Had fabricated the coded letter in my handwriting. He had spent 3 months practicing it. She had found out 2 weeks after the execution. Had confronted him. And Garrett had told her the truth. Not from guilt. From arrogance. He hadn't believed she would do anything about it. He was right, she said. I didn't. Not immediately. Her voice was the flattest I had heard it. I told myself there was nothing to be done. You were gone. The conviction was sealed. If I opened it, a pause. My son. Your son, I said. Yes, she said. Quietly. My son. I sat with that for a moment. The silence of it. The particular horror of loving someone who had done something unforgivable. When did you change your mind? I asked. When Mira arrived, she said. When she started looking. And when she stopped. When I looked at her in that corridor. And you knew, I said. She looked at me. Directly. Unflinchingly. I looked at the way she moved, she said. The way she held herself in that corridor. The way she said my name and her voice didn't have an accent anymore. A pause. I knew Seren Ashford for 3 years. The room was very quiet. And I know her now, Mara said. I didn't confirm it. I didn't deny it. I stood at the window and looked out at the gray morning and let the silence sit. Why are you here? I said finally. To tell you about Garrett, she said. And to tell you about the person above him. I turned. You know who they are, I said. The one who coordinated it. Yes, she said. Tell me. She took a slow breath. His name is Elder Dracos, she said. Morvain Council. He's been running Duskfang assets inside Ironvale for 3 years. Using this pack as a staging ground to weaken the eastern border from within. So that when Duskfang moves in force, there will be no organized resistance. And Garrett was his instrument inside Ironvale. Yes. And Corin. Corin has been supplying compounds to Duskfang agents for 2 years. The dissolution compound in the cabinet was Dracos's design. He intended to use Mira as a vessel. A puppet Luna who would influence Caius, slow his border preparations, feed information. Dracos is on the Morvain Council, I said. He's coming here in 9 days. Yes. To check on his installation, I said. Yes. She met my eyes. He doesn't know it failed, she said. I let that sit. The shape of it. The terrible, precise opportunity of it. Dracos was coming to inspect his work. Expecting to find a hollowed-out vessel. He would find me instead. And I could use that. Mara, I said. Yes. Will you testify? To everything you've just told me? A pause. Including Garrett's role, I said. The pause stretched longer. Her hands in her lap were still. Yes, she said. 1 word. It cost her everything she had. I could see it. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. She stood. Moved toward the door. Stopped. For what it's worth, she said, without turning around. I read those charges and I knew. I have known since the moment I read them that they were wrong. Her shoulders were rigid. I will spend the rest of my life knowing that I read them anyway. I said nothing. What was there to say? She walked out. And I stood in the empty room with every piece of it assembled in my hands at last. Garrett. Corin. Dracos. 3 instruments. 1 hand. And 9 days until that hand walked through the manor gates. I went to Caius that afternoon. Not his study. Not a formal setting. He was in the training ground alone, running drills in the cold air with the focused intensity of someone burning something off. I stood at the edge of the clearing and watched. He was the god, he was extraordinary to watch. He always had been. The fluid precision of it. The economy of movement. Not a single motion wasted. I had watched him train 100 times as Seren. I watched him now as whatever I was. And felt the same thing I had always felt. That pull. That terrible, inconvenient, bone-deep pull. Stop it, I told myself. He saw me. Slowed. Stopped. Crossed the clearing to where I stood. Close enough that his breath showed white in the cold air between us. You have something to tell me, he said. Not yet, I said. Tomorrow. He studied my face. You look, he stopped. What? Different, he said. Since you arrived. You look more, he seemed to be searching for the word. More what? More like yourself, he said. And I did not know what to do with that. Because he was right. Because every day I spent in this body I was becoming more Seren and less of anyone's idea of Mira. And he could see it. He could see it and he didn't know what he was seeing. Caius, I said. He was very still. What I'm going to show you tomorrow, I said. Some of it will be hard. Is it about the conviction? Yes. He absorbed that. And the council, he asked. Yes. A beat. And you, he said. The question landed differently than he intended it. And you? Yes. All of it was about me. Some of it, I said carefully. Yes. He looked at me for a long moment. The cold air between us. The gray light. His silver eyes finding something in my face that he couldn't name and couldn't look away from. All right, he said. He walked past me back toward the manor. And stopped. Mira. Yes. Whatever you're carrying, he said. Without turning around. You don't have to carry it alone. I stood in the cold training ground long after he was gone. Pressed both hands over my face. Breathed. In. Out. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow everything changes. One more night of being no one. One more night of the lie. And then. The door I had been holding shut for 9 days would open. And I had no idea what would come through it. Chapter 10. I didn't sleep. Not 1 hour of it. I lay in Myra's bed and stared at the stone ceiling and ran through every version of tomorrow that I could construct. Every possible reaction. Every variable. There were too many. At some point I stopped trying to control the outcome and simply lay there in the dark, breathing, feeling the weight of what was coming settle over me like water. By tomorrow night, he will know. What he did with that knowledge. That part wasn't mine to control. I got up before dawn. Dressed carefully. The dark training clothes felt wrong today. I went to the wardrobe. Myra's clothes were practical and dark and efficient. But at the very back, wrapped in cloth, hung a dress. Deep gold. Long-sleeved. Simply cut. Not Myra's style at all. I unwrapped it. Held it up to the gray pre-dawn light. I recognized the fabric. It was iron veil weave, the specific pattern used for formal pack occasions. Someone had left this here. For her. For the Luna. I put it on. Stood in front of the mirror. Myra's face. Myra's dark hair. Myra's amber eyes. But the dress was gold. And for a single, strange moment, looking at my reflection in the mirror. I didn't see either of us clearly. I saw something that was neither Seren nor Mira. Something in between. Something that had been forged in the space between a death and a resurrection. I didn't know what to call that. But I straightened my spine. And I went to find Caius. He was already in the study. Of course he was. The man had never learned to sleep past dawn. He looked up when I entered. His eyes moved over the dress for a fraction of a second. Something in his expression shifted. I didn't let myself analyze it. Devlin is coming, I said. And Elder Mara. I've asked them both to be here. A pause. How many people know what you're about to tell me, he said. 4, including you. I paused. And the people who need to not know yet. He nodded once. Gestured to the chair across the desk. I didn't sit. Not yet. Devlin arrived first. He entered the study, saw Caius, and went very still in the particular way of someone who is committed to an action and is now facing its full weight. Alpha, he said. Devlin. Caius's voice was level. Mira tells me you have something for me. Yes, sir. He produced the patrol report. Set it on the desk. Caius read it. The room was completely silent for the 2 minutes it took him. Then he set it down. Garrett, he said. Yes, Devlin said. This places him on the western perimeter. The evidence was supposedly found on the eastern. Yes, sir. He couldn't have found it. No. Caius was quiet. Where is Garrett now? He asked. Currently at Morning Post, Devlin said. Eastern Gate. Have him brought in, Caius said. Quietly. Don't alarm him. Devlin left. Elder Mara arrived next. She entered the study and looked at Caius, and something passed between them, some long, painful recognition, and she sat down without being asked. "You already know something," Caius said to her. "Yes," she said. "Tell me." She told him. Everything she had told me, in the same flat, worn voice. Caius listened without interruption. Without visible reaction. The only sign was his hands, flat on the desk at first, and then, at a certain point in the account, very slowly curling into fists. When Mara finished, the silence lasted a long time. "Your son," Caius said. "Yes," she said. "Planted the evidence against Seren." Her name. Out loud. In this room. For the first time in a year. Mara didn't flinch. "Yes," she said. Caius stood up. Walked to the window. Stood with his back to both of us. I gave him 30 seconds. Then I opened the folder I had brought from my room. The letters from Corin's cabinet. The vial labels, transcribed in my own hand with the cipher decoded beside them. "There's more," I said. He turned. I set the folder on the desk. He came back. "Read." And this time something broke through the controlled surface. Not anger, though anger was there, underneath. Something older. Something that looked almost like grief. "The bonding tonic," he said. "Corin put dissolution compound in it," I said. "Duskfang sourced. Designed to empty the vessel and leave it receptive." A pause. "It was meant to turn Mira into their instrument." "It didn't work," he said. "No," I said. "It didn't work." He looked at me. And something in his silver eyes shifted. A question he wasn't asking yet. "And Elder Draco's," I said. "He coordinated it all. He arrives in 8 days." Caius set the folder down. Turned back to the window. "For a year," he said. Very quietly. "For a year I've been sitting with a fractured sigil and no name to put to it." "You found the compromised evidence marker," I said. 3 weeks after, he stopped. 3 weeks after the execution, I said. His shoulders were rigid. "Yes," he said. Devlin returned with Garrett. Garrett was a big man, broad, blonde, with the confidence of someone who had never seriously believed in consequences. He walked into the study and saw his mother, and something flickered across his face. Then he saw the patrol report on the desk. The flicker became something colder. "Alpha," he said. "Smooth. What's this about?" "Sit down," Caius said. He hadn't turned from the window. Garrett sat. "The patrol report from the night of the Seren Ashford evidence discovery," Caius said. Still not turning. "Places you at the western perimeter. There must be an error in the..." "Don't." Caius turned. And whatever was on his face made Garrett go silent immediately. "Don't," Caius said again. Quietly. "I have the report. I have the cabinet evidence. I have your mother's testimony." A pause. "And I have had 12 months of patience. Don't waste what remains of it." Garrett looked at Mara. Something moved across his face. For a moment I thought it was guilt. Then I realized it was calculation. "I was acting on orders," he said. "From above this pack. From the council." "From Draco's," Caius said. The word landed like a stone. Garrett went very still. "How do you..." He stopped. "Did you know about the dissolution compound?" Caius asked. "In the new mate's bonding tonic?" A silence. "I knew something was planned for her," Garrett said. "I wasn't told the specifics." "But you knew she was a target." "Yes." "And you said nothing." Garrett said nothing. "Get him out of here," Caius said to Devlin. "Holding quarters. No contact with anyone." Devlin hauled Garrett to his feet and walked him out. Mara sat very still in her chair. Mara, Caius said. She looked up at him. Thank you for coming forward, he said. And his voice, despite everything, was not unkind. She nodded once. Stood. At the door she paused. Caius, she said. He turned. She was innocent, Mara said. I want it on record that I knew it. And I said nothing. Whatever comes from that, her voice didn't waver. I accept it. She left. And then it was just the two of us. In the quiet. The folder on the desk. The folder of evidence that had condemned me and the folder of evidence that exonerated me and the man who had held both simultaneously for 3 weeks before I even arrived. Caius, I said. Give me a moment, he said. I gave him the moment. He stood at the window with his back to me and his hands braced against the stone sill, and I watched the rise and fall of his breathing, slow from something ragged to something more controlled. And then he turned. There's something you're not telling me, he said. Not accusatory. Certain. Yes, I said. About yourself. Yes. He studied me. The dissolution compound didn't work, he said slowly. Mira had the reaction, and something changed. You changed. He tilted his head. You know things you shouldn't know. You move like someone trained here. You understand pack notation, Duskfang cipher. You asked about Seren's guilt on your second day. A pause. And you are the reason all of this is in front of me today. Not coincidence. Not luck. His voice was very quiet. Who are you? The room held its breath. I held mine. Every version of this moment that I had constructed over 9 days dissolved. There was no good version. There was no safe version. There was only this moment and his silver eyes and the truth I had been carrying like a stone against my chest. If I tell you, I said, you will not believe me. Try, he said. I looked at him. Directly. For the first time, without the careful management. Without the performance. My name, I said, is Seren Ashford. The silence was absolute. He didn't move. Didn't speak. His face went through something I had never seen on it before, a sequence of expressions so rapid and uncontrolled they were almost painful to watch. Disbelief. Then something that wasn't disbelief. Then something that looked like a man falling. That's not, he started. Possible, I said. I know. Seren is? Dead. Yes. I held his gaze. I was. And then your healer put Duskfang dissolution compound into the bonding tonic and it created a gap. And I fell into it. That's not possible, I said again. I know. He stared at me. Prove it, he said. I can't, I said. Not the way you want. I have no evidence that is me in here and not Mira. I paused. Except everything I know. Anyone could have studied. The first morning I arrived, I said. You were in the training ground at 4th Bell. You ran the eastern perimeter drill in reverse, because you always reverse the direction when the south wind is strong, so the wolves run into the scent and can't rely on it. You've done it every strong south wind morning since the pack lost 2 wolves to an ambush 3 years ago because the south wind masked the Duskfang scouts. A pause. Mira Vane has been inside Ironvale for 9 days. She has never been told that. No one has ever discussed it in her presence. He had gone very still. The scar on your left shoulder, I said. Crescent shape. You got it the night we ran the Holofen together in our 2nd month. You fell on a hidden fence post in the dark. You didn't tell anyone because you didn't want to hear Rafe's opinion of your route planning. His hand moved involuntarily to his left shoulder. Stopped. The first time you brought me tea, I said. In our first week. You put honey in it without asking. Because you had scented that I preferred it. You never told me you'd noticed. You just put the honey in. My voice had dropped. I never thanked you for that. I thought about it later and I never. Stop, he said. The word came out rough. Broken at the edge of it. He crossed the room. 3 steps. He stopped 1 pace away from me. This close I could see, there was something undone in his face. Something cracked open that had been sealed for a year. He raised his hand. Slowly. Touched Myra's jaw with the backs of his fingers. Searching. The touch sent something electric through the body I was wearing, not the mate bond, something older than that. Something that lived beneath all the layers of Mira and dissolution compound and soul and bone. Recognition. He felt it too. I could see it in his face. The way it devastated him. How is this possible, he whispered. I don't know, I said. I only know it's true. Seren. My name. In his voice. After a year of being erased. My name, said quietly, in the room where they had sealed my files. I pressed my lips together. Held it. I'm here, I said. He stepped back. Had to. I understood. The structural shock of it, you don't absorb this kind of thing by standing close to it. He walked to the other side of the room and put his hands on the back of a chair and stood with his head down. I sentenced you, he said. Yes. I turned. I know, I said. You turned away. A sound from him that was not quite a word. I thought, he stopped. The evidence was fabricated, I said. All of it. I know that now. His knuckles whitened on the chair. I should have known it then. Yes, I said. You should have. I didn't soften it. He deserved the truth of it. He had always deserved the truth of it. You came back, he said. Still not looking at me. You came back and instead of, he seemed to be struggling. You had every reason to destroy me. I was planning to, I said. He looked up. The plan was to find the evidence. Expose the conspiracy. Watch everything collapse. Make sure you understood exactly what had been done in your name. I paused. Make sure you felt it the way I felt it. And now, he said. Now. Now I was standing in another woman's body with his fingerprints still warm on her jaw and a year of death behind me and 8 days until Dracos walked through the gates expecting to find his weapon ready. Now I was something I didn't have a name for. Not Seren entirely. Not Mira. Not quite either. Something that had been burned down and rebuilt in borrowed bones. Now, I said. I think there's something more important than what I want. What's more important, he said. Finishing it, I said. Getting Dracos. Getting the confession. Making sure the full truth is documented and witnessed and cannot be buried again. A pause. And then you and I will have the conversation we need to have. He looked at me. For a long, long time. All right, he said. Then, I'm sorry. 2 words. Quietly. Not a performance. Not the formal apology of an alpha addressing a wrong. Just 2 words. Cracked at the edges. I held them. I know, I said. I didn't tell him it was all right. It wasn't all right. But it was acknowledged. And for today, that was enough. Chapter 11. 8 days. We used every one of them. Caius unsealed my files officially, in front of the senior Pack Council, and read the contents aloud and explained the compromised evidence marker and the patrol report discrepancy and laid out every piece while Garrett sat in the holding room and Corin sat in the holding room and Elder Mara sat beside Devlin with her hands folded, and her chin up and did not look away. The pack was very quiet. Then it was not quiet at all. I sat at the back of the hall and watched. This was not my moment. Not yet. This was the pack's moment, the moment a community absorbs the information that it has done something irrevocable and wrong, and that the wrong was not an accident but a construction. It was not a clean moment. There was anger. There was grief. There were wolves who had been certain of my guilt and were now reconstructing a year of certainty into something else. That kind of reconstruction is painful. I did not spare them the pain of it. Caius formally overturned the conviction on the 5th day. In the same stone courtyard. In front of the same witnesses, or those who remained. He stood in the center of it and read the reversal and reinstated my name to every record and every wall and every conversation it had been removed from. Seren Ashford. Innocent. I stood in the crowd and listened to my own name said aloud by his voice and felt something shift inside this borrowed body. Something that had been clenched loosen. Something that had been cold for a year find, briefly, warmth. Sasha stood beside me. She had been told the essential facts, not all of them, not the impossible heart of it, but enough. That the previous mate had been wrongly convicted. That the new mate had uncovered the truth. She took my hand during the reading. Held it. I let her. On the 7th day, Caius came to my room. Knocked. Waited. I opened the door and he stood there in the hallway with the careful posture of someone who had been deciding something for a long time and had finally made the decision. Can I come in? I stepped back. He entered. Didn't sit. Stood in the center of the room and looked at me, at Myra's face, Myra's dark hair, Myra's amber eyes, with something in his expression that I couldn't quite resolve. I've been thinking, he said. About what? About what happens next. A pause. After Draco's. What do you mean? He looked at his hands. You're in someone else's body, he said. Mira Vane was a real person. She had a family. A life before this. A father in the Morvain territories who thinks his daughter is here, alive, becoming a Luna. He paused. What do we do about that? I had been thinking about it too. Every night. The question of Mira. She was not entirely gone, I still felt the watermark of her. Still found her instincts in my hands and her rhythms in my step. But she was not present. Not conscious. Was she somewhere? Was she held in some space between this body and wherever the dead went? I didn't know. I don't know what I am, I said. Exactly. I don't know if this body can be returned to her. I don't know if there's something left of her to return to. I paused. I only know that I am here. And she? She came here investigating, Caius said quietly. She found the sigil. She started pulling the thread. She was targeted because of it. Yes. She didn't deserve what was done to her. No, I said. She didn't. We were quiet. She would have liked you, I said. I read her journal. She was observant and careful and she cared about fairness. She noticed that my name had been removed and thought it was wrong. I paused. She would have liked you when she got to know you. He absorbed that. And you, he said. Did you? He stopped. Do I still love you? I said. The word sat in the room between us. He didn't deny that was the question. I don't know, I said. Which was the most honest thing I had said yet. I came here to destroy you. The love I had, I used it to fuel the destruction plan. And then, I looked at him. And then you turned out to be more complicated than a monster. Which is deeply inconvenient. Something in his face moved. Almost a smile. I'm sorry to inconvenience you, he said. You always were, I said. The smile happened. Small. Brief. Broken at the edges by everything underneath it. But real. The first real smile I had seen on his face in over a year. After Draco's, I said. We figure out the rest. One thing at a time. One thing at a time, he agreed. He moved toward the door. Caius, I said. He stopped. The honey in the tea, I said. It mattered. It always mattered. I just didn't tell you. He was still for a moment. Then he nodded. And left. And I sat down on the bed and pressed my borrowed hands over my borrowed face and let myself feel, just for a moment, all of the things I had been too strategic to feel. The grief of it. The enormous, complicated grief of a year and a death and a love that had survived both and didn't know what shape it was supposed to take now. I felt it. All of it. And then I straightened up. Because tomorrow, Draco's arrived. He came at midday. A council delegation, 6 people, 2 advisors, a recorder, and Elder Draco's himself. 70 years old. Silver-haired. The kind of face that had learned over decades to project benevolent authority so thoroughly that the malevolence underneath it had become invisible to everyone except those looking specifically for it. I was looking specifically for it. I watched from the upper gallery as he was welcomed into the great hall. Watched him shake Caius's hand. Watched him scan the room. His eyes found me. I had positioned myself deliberately. Standing slightly apart from the pack cluster. Myra's face arranged in an expression of careful blankness. The expression his compound was supposed to have created. He held my gaze for 3 seconds. Something in his face relaxed fractionally. He thought it had worked. He thought I was his. Good. The welcome meal was formal. I sat at Caius's right, the mate's seat, and ate without tasting and listened to Draco's perform warmth and concern and collegial authority across the table. He was good. If I hadn't known, I might have been taken in. At one point he addressed me directly. Lady Mira. How are you settling in? Very well, I said. The blankness in my voice was deliberate. His eyes moved briefly to Caius. A checking motion. Seeing how the alpha responded to his mate's flatness. Caius gave nothing away. The bonding process can be taxing, Draco said warmly. It was, I said. I feel different than I expected. Since the tonic. His expression didn't change. But his scent did. Satisfaction. He thought I was telling him his compound had taken effect. That's quite normal, he said. I'm sure you'd know, I said pleasantly. His eyes sharpened. Just slightly. Just enough. I looked back at my plate. After the meal, Caius announced that the formal review session would begin at the 3rd hour. Standard protocol, Draco's and his advisors with the Alpha, reviewing pack reports and border status. What was not standard protocol was what I had placed inside the border status folder. A full transcription of the Duskfang cipher letters from Corin's cabinet. With Corin's signed confession, obtained 2 days ago after a very long and very specific conversation in the holding room. And a transcription of everything Mara had told me. And the patrol report. And the evidence marker. Every piece, assembled in a single folder, sitting inside the routine review documents. Waiting for the moment Draco's opened it. I was not in the room when it happened. I didn't need to be. I stood in the corridor outside and listened. The sound of pages turning. Then silence. Then Draco's voice, still controlled, asking a question. Then Caius's voice, answering it. Then more silence. And then, the thing I had been waiting for. The sound of a chair being pushed back. The sound of Draco's attempting to stand and finding, apparently, that Devlin and 2 senior wolves had been waiting in the corridor and were now inside the room. Elder Draco's, Caius said. His voice carried clearly through the door. Calm. Absolute. You are formally detained pending transfer to full council authority for review of conspiracy charges against the Iron Veil Pact and the wrongful execution of Luna Seren Ashford. A pause. On behalf of the Morvain Council, I demand. You are no longer speaking on behalf of the Morvain Council, Caius said. You are speaking as a private individual who has been placed under pack hold. A beat. I suggest you speak carefully. I pressed my back against the corridor wall. Let out a breath that felt like it had been building for a year. For an entire year of dying and waking and lying and investigating and carrying the weight of it alone. This breath. This one long exhale. It wasn't over. There would be hearings. Council reviews. Testimony. The long, grinding work of formal justice. Garrett and Corin would face their own proceedings. The eastern border situation still needed addressing. And there was the unresolved, enormous question of what I was. What I would be. What Myra's body meant in Myra's family and Myra's life that I was living inside. None of that was resolved. But this part was done. The door opened. Caius stepped into the corridor. He looked at me. I looked at him. It's done, he said. Not entirely, I said. No, he agreed. But this part. I nodded. He stood in the corridor beside me and we stood there together in the quiet aftermath of it and didn't speak for a long moment. What now? I said finally. Now, he said, we figure out the rest. You said that would come after Draco's, I said. It did, he said. Draco's is in a holding room. So here we are. I almost laughed. I didn't quite. But I almost did. And he almost smiled again. And between the almost laugh and the almost smile was something that felt, tentatively, like the first edge of something livable. Not fixed. Not healed. But possible. Chapter 12. 3 weeks after Draco's detention. The hearings were in progress. The testimony was being gathered. 2 other Morvain Council members had been implicated, the breadth of the conspiracy was wider than anyone had suspected, and the process of dismantling it was slow and careful and relentless. Ironvale's eastern border patrols had been restructured. Devlin oversaw the new formation personally. Corin had been removed from his position and was cooperating with the council review in exchange for reduced charges. Garrett was awaiting formal hearing. Elder Mara had submitted her full testimony and resigned her eldership. She had not asked for forgiveness, which was the bravest thing I had watched anyone do throughout all of this. Sasha had told me, quietly, that she thought Mara would spend the rest of her life trying to make it right. Can you? I asked. Make something like that right? Sasha had been quiet for a moment. I don't know, she said. But I think the trying matters. Even when the making right isn't possible. I had started spending time in the East Garden. A small walled garden off the manor's eastern face, stone benches, old climbing vines, a fountain that ran even in cold weather because something in the underground pipes kept it moving. I went there to think. Myra's watermark was fainter now. I noticed it receding gradually over the weeks, the instinctive reaches toward wrong shelves, the accent that slipped into my voice sometimes at night. Fading. Like she was settling. Like whatever remained of her was making peace with the situation. Or like I was becoming whoever this was now. The person wearing Myra's face and carrying Seren's memories and standing in the ruins of both. I had written to Myra's father. It had taken me 4 attempts. In the end I had written, I am well. I am not who I was when I arrived. I think that might be all right. I think she would understand. Vague. Inadequate. But the truest thing I could manage. Caius found me in the garden one evening. He had developed the habit of it over the weeks, appearing at the bench across from mine as the light went amber, sitting with a mug of something warm, not always speaking. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we sat in the companionable silence of two people who had too much history between them to fill silences artificially. Tonight he sat. I watched the fountain. The council confirmed the full exoneration today, he said. I know. Devlin had told me. It'll be published formally next week. I know. He was quiet. Seren Ashford, he said. Name fully reinstated. Conviction nullified. Posthumous recognition of Caius. He stopped. I know, I said. I've read all the documents. I wanted to tell you myself, he said. I looked at him. He was looking at the fountain too. The low amber light of the evening turning everything slightly golden. Thank you, I said. He nodded. We sat. I've been thinking, he said after a while. Dangerous, I said. The edge of his mouth moved. About who you are now, he said. What name you're going to use. How you want to, how this works, going forward. I've been thinking about that too, I said. And? I looked at my hands in my lap. Mayra's hands. Long-fingered, slightly calloused at the right-hand edge from the writing grip she'd had. I had grown used to these hands. They had found things. Hidden things. Opened locks. Written confessions. Held a bone-handled knife in the dark and made promises. They were, in whatever way that mattered, mine now too. I think, I said, that I am both of them. He considered this. Seren and Mira, he said. I carry what Seren was. Everything she felt and knew and loved and wanted. I paused. And I exist in what Mira left. Her body, her face, her instincts, pieces of her perception that are written into the bone. I looked up. I'm not fully either. I'm whatever this is. The thing that was forged in the gap between them. He was watching me carefully. What do you want to call that, he said. I thought about it. Seren, I said. I want to keep that. Whatever I am, I want to keep being Seren. A pause. But maybe, Seren who survived. Seren who is also something new. He nodded. Slowly. All right, he said. The fountain ran between us. The garden smelled of old stone and cold vines and something faintly alive underneath the winter, that stubborn green smell that persists through everything. I owe you more than an apology, he said. Yes, I said. I know that he stopped. Started again. I know that saying sorry doesn't. Caius. I turned to look at him fully. I know. You know. We both know what you did and what it cost. I held his gaze. I'm not absolved you. I won't tell you it's all right. It wasn't all right. No, he said. But I stopped. Looked at the fountain. I also know what you did after, I said. When you found the fracture in the evidence. You didn't bury it. You held it open and you waited. You couldn't undo the thing you'd done, but you kept the question alive when it would have been easier to close it. That's not. It's not enough, I said. I know. But it's something. And I'm choosing to hold both. I looked back at him. The thing you did and the thing you did after. Both of them. Because that's who you are. Not a monster. Not a hero. Just, a man who made a catastrophic choice and then spent a year trying to find the edge of it. His jaw was tight. His eyes were not dry. I looked away, he said. When the fire? I know, I said. I couldn't, his voice cracked. The first time. In all of this, the first time. I couldn't watch and I knew I should have an eye. I know, I said. I reached across the space between the benches. Put my hand over his. Myra's hand over the hand I had known for 2 years. He went still. I know, I said a third time. Quietly. And I am telling you, I know. And I am still here. He turned his hand under mine. Held it. The fountain ran. The amber light faded to something softer. I don't know what this is, he said. What we are. Whether this is, he looked at our joined hands. Whether this is something that can be. I don't know either, I said. And I think that's all right. For now. For now, he said. We have time, I said. Which is something I didn't expect to have. He looked at me. At Myra's face. At whatever lived behind it. I see you, he said. In there. I need you to know that. A pause. I see her. My throat closed. I had been seen as Mira. Watched as Mira. Spoken to as Mira. But this was different. He was looking at the face and seeing through it. Seeing me. Seren. I know, I said, for the fourth time. And this time it meant something different. This time it meant, I believe you. We sat in the garden until the evening went fully dark and the stars appeared above the walled garden one by one, cold and precise and permanent. And something that had been clenched in me for a year, through the dying and the waking and the lying and the carrying of it all, finally, let go. Not everything. Not the grief. Not the memory of flames. Not the image of him turning away. Those would stay. Some things don't leave. They just find a place to live that isn't your whole chest. But the rage that had been the engine of all of it. The furious, driving, burning need to make them see what they had done. That had been answered. They saw. He saw. And I was still here. Devlin found me the next morning in the training ground. He came early, like I did, and stood at the edge of the clearing in the cold air. He looked at me for a long moment. You're Seren, he said. Not a question. How long have you known? I asked. Since the first week, he said. The way you corrected your fighting stance. Mira Vane was trained more Vane style, low and fast. What I taught Seren was different. When you started drifting back to it, he shrugged. I know the people I've trained. Why didn't you say anything? Because you were clearly doing something, he said. And I thought, whatever she's doing, she deserves the room to do it. A pause. I was right. I looked at him. This man who had never believed in my guilt. Who had investigated quietly for 6 months before I arrived. Who had handed me the patrol report when he had every reason not to trust anyone. Devlin, I said. Don't thank me, he said. I owed you 6 months of not acting sooner. You were being careful, I said. That's not a debt. He was quiet. Then, what happens now? Now, I said, I keep training. The eastern border still needs wolves who know what they're doing. He almost smiled. Same stance, he said. Same stance, I agreed. We trained until the sun was fully up. And when the rest of the pack filtered into the clearing, and the morning noise started up around us, I stood in the middle of the training ground with my borrowed body and my restored name and the cold clean air in my lungs. And I felt, for the first time in a year, that I was somewhere I was supposed to be. Not the same place I had been before. Not the life I had lived or the woman I had been. Something else. Something that had been burned down to the root and grown back in a different shape. Harder in places. Softer in others. More honest than I had ever allowed myself to be. Seren, the morning seemed to say. Seren who survived. I breathed it in. All of it. And I stayed. 6 months later. The Morvain Council had been restructured. 3 elders removed. 2 facing criminal proceedings including Draco's, who had spent his first month in holding insisting on his authority and his second month cooperating with the full investigation when it became clear that his authority had evaporated completely. Garrett had received formal sanction, pack exile for 5 years. Mara had asked for no reduction in his sentence and no increase. She had attended every day of the hearing. She attended as penance, I thought. As witness. I respected that. Corin had been stripped of his healer's title and barred from practice within 3 pack territories. He had moved to the outer borders. I had seen him once since then, from a distance, and felt nothing particular. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just the blunt fact of what he had been and what he would carry. That was enough. The eastern border held. The Duskfang incursions had stopped almost immediately after Draco's detention. Without their inside intelligence, their positioning became guesswork, and Devlin's restructured patrols made guesswork expensive. There were still tensions. There would always be tensions at borders. But the particular kind of manufactured tension that required an inside hand, that was over. Myra's father came to Iron Vale in the spring. A quiet man. Gentle-eyed. He looked at me for a long time when we met, in the way of someone cataloging small changes. I had written him the true account, in the end. Not the full impossible heart of it. I didn't have the language for that and wasn't sure he would survive the knowledge of what had been done to his daughter. But enough. That Mira had been brave. That she had been investigating something important. That what had happened to her had been done deliberately, and that the people responsible had been held accountable. He had cried. Quietly. With the dignity of someone who saved their breaking for private. I sat with him in the garden where Caius and I had held hands over the fountain. She would have liked this garden, he said. She would have, I said. And I meant it. He stayed 3 days. When he left, he held both my hands in both of his for a moment. Thank you, he said. For finishing what she started. He couldn't have known how precisely that landed. She did the hardest part, I said. He nodded. And left. And I stood in the garden and felt Myra's watermark, fainter now, just the faintest trace of her, like a signature in light pencil underneath a painting, and said, silently. He knows you were brave. The right people know. Caius and I were, something. There wasn't a clean word for it. The mate bond between him and Mira had not completed, the dissolution compound had interrupted the process, and without its completion, I existed in a technically unpartnered state, which caused some administrative confusion and a great deal of careful diplomatic language from the Pack Council. In practice, it was simpler than that. We were 2 people who had loved each other and lost each other and found each other in the most impossible way imaginable, and were slowly, carefully, without rushing it, choosing each other again. Not the same choice as before. A different choice. Made by different people. The version of Caius who had sat with a fractured sigil for 12 months and held the question open. The version of me who had died and come back and learned that my fury and my love had always been the same fire. Different people. Making a different choice. He found me in the East Garden on an evening in late spring when the climbing vines were finally green again and the fountain ran warmer than it had all winter. He sat across from me. No mugs tonight. Just him. The council formally asked, he said. Asked what? I said. Whether the pack has a Luna. A pause. They need to know for the records. What did you tell them? I said. He looked at me. Silver eyes. Still silver. Still catching light like a blade. I told them to ask her, he said. The fountain ran between us. The green smell of spring. The long light of an evening that didn't want to end. I looked at him. This man who had failed me and held the question open and searched for me in a face he'd never seen and said I see her in a garden in the dark. This complicated, costly, necessary man. I'm not the same person, I said. As the one you knew. I know, he said. This face isn't mine. Not entirely. Not the way you knew it. I know. And I will never tell you it was all right, I said. What happened? I will never say that. I know, he said. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? I said. He was quiet for a moment. I'm asking, he said, if you want to stay. The question hung in the evening air between us. Simple. Not will you be my mate in the formal weight of that phrase. Just, do you want to stay? Do you want this? Not the title, not the position, not the role. Just, here. With him. I thought of the fire. The chains. His back turning. I thought of waking in the wrong body. Of 9 days of lying. Of the journal under the mattress and the knife in my boot and the hollow stone and Myra's careful, cramped handwriting tilting left like it was trying to lean away from the page. I thought of Mara's face reading my charges and the patrol report and Corin's locked cabinet and Dracos's expression of satisfaction when he thought his compound had worked. I thought of all of it. Every piece. And then I set it down. Not gone. Not forgiven into absence. Just set down. Placed somewhere I could carry it without it carrying me. And I looked at Caius across the fountain in the spring evening. Yes, I said. He exhaled. Slow. Like he'd been holding that breath for longer than just this evening. He reached across the space between the benches. Offered his hand. The same way I had offered mine. I took it. And we sat in the garden until the stars came out. And I was Seren Ashford. Restored. Returned. Alive in borrowed bones that had become, over 6 months, simply mine. Alive in a love that had been burned and broken and built again into something harder and more honest and more real than what it had been before. Alive. Still here. Still here. The end. She was executed for a crime she didn't commit. She came back in the wrong body, with the wrong face and the right fury. And she stayed, not because she forgot what was done to her. But because she chose, with full knowledge of the cost, to remain. That's not a small thing. That's everything. What part stayed with you the most? Was it the moment he said I see her in the dark garden? The hollow stone and Myra's careful message? Or the very first morning, waking up in someone else's skin and choosing, anyway, to stay in the fight? Tell us in the comments. And if this story found you, share it with someone who needs to hear it.